Last week for Northern Michigan in Focus, we had part one of Lon Calloway's story. He spent 45 years sailing as a merchant mariner on more than 85 vessels, and he wrote a book about his adventures. Corey Adkins picks up the story with some of the amazing people Calloway's met over the years.
Probably the most insane was a guy named Mike that liked to make bombs. He was mad at the seagulls because they would fly over and deposit things on him when he was back fishing, and you couldn't tell the guy not to stand by the garbage cans. And he'd go down below and create these little bombs, and then he was a cook, so he'd bake them into a loaf of bread, and then he'd go back and chump some garbage and then light this bread bomb and throw it over the side and vaporize as many seagulls as he could.
When Lon was new on the boats, one of the freighters he was on was called the Seawall Avery. They were 15 hours ahead of the Edmund Fitzgerald on November 10th, 1975.
We're headed westbound through the Straits of Mackinac, and the weather was starting to get pretty rough for us. And as we got down through the straits and got out down toward Lansing Shoal, we really took a beating. Our lifeboat jumped the cradle, punched a hole in the bottom of that. I remember we got hit one time so hard my toothbrush popped out of the holder and bounced off the ceiling. This was the morning after. This would have been November 11th, 1975. The first mate, I was the deckhand on the Seawall Avery, and the first mate said, go back and change out the flag because it was damaged. This windsock was totally blown out that night.
Even though that was a big storm, it wasn't the worst weather he's ever sailed through.
When I was in Alaska in the U.S. Coast Guard, I was stationed in a town called Sitka, and we were headed for Honolulu late in the year in October, going down for some training with the Navy, and we got caught in a typhoon. And we spent 12 days in probably 45 to 50 foot seas, winds in excess of 75 to 80 miles an hour, just getting stomped. And I never thought that we were going to make it.
Over the 4 decades and 85 ships he's worked on, his favorite?
Of course, the Edward L. Ryerson on the Great Lakes, Queen of the Lakes, Fast Eddie.
He even fell in love on the Ryerson.
She was a security officer at the Sioux Locks, and we were coming downbound, and she came over after her shift and wanted to buy a ship's hat, and we were selling those, and I happened to be the guy handling the sales. You know, one thing led to another, and here 12 years later, you know, we've been engaged now for 5 years.
His book that is available on Amazon, Salty, The Colorful Adventures of a Well-Seasoned Sea Dog, is full of stories like this and is a great read for all of us boat nerds who wonder what's happening on those beautiful ships as they glide by.
I just wanted to share some of the more humorous aspects and the things that are going on there that you might not be aware of just looking at it from a distance.
For Northern Michigan in Focus, I'm Corey Adkins.